Welcome everyone, this is Madame Morbs and I have some creepy stories for you today. Some of us never questioned who Jack the Ripper really was. The Ripper was just a name the papers called him to make everyone more afraid. But murder and fear, they were part of our lives. We barely noticed anymore. What does draw notice is a carriage from a better part of town. When you're used to the smell of sweat and dirt and grime, a scented handkerchief draws like a bloodhound. We called the killer Leather Apron when we whispered warnings to each other. That's because we'd seen him in his leather apron leaving the scenes of the crime. The murders didn't stand out at first. When they got a name for themselves and nobody did anything about them, it was pretty clear why. The gentleman in the nice carriage with hired goons was allowed to come in, cut us up, and leave. Everyone knew he was someone with connections and money. We put it on ourselves to be safe. No going alone at night. Girls working the street knew we were the most at risk. We did it to survive, but this was killing us. It was too easy to lower your guard. Take one more client. The ones killed were women who only ended up on the street when they were in the downswing of life. They drank a little too much to be aware. They fought with their families and walked the streets to cool down. Many blamed them for not being careful enough. If things had muddled on, who knows how long we would have turned away. The November chill gave way to real cold. This was when poor Mary Kelly met her fate in her own room, and we realized the animal wasn't going to stop. It wasn't hard to catch the killer in a trap of his own making. All we needed was a group of women angry enough to take risks. I was the bait. So many of the women I knew ended up in Whitechapel because something had gone wrong with their lives. But I was born to those streets. I never knew or expected anything different. I went out alone. There was a creeping fog around my thin-soled shoes. I could feel the moment the killer focused in on me. I played coy. Then there he was, the man himself, coming towards me. He was so plain in real life, just a dull boy with dead eyes. It wasn't hard to lead him away from the gas lamps. He thought he had me cornered. He looked so proud of himself as his footsteps clicked over the cobblestones, deadly calm when he pulled the blade. That's when the women I was with bled from the shadows. He never left that alley. His bones are probably still buried in the pit we had prepared. Everyone wonders who he was, but in the end, he didn't matter at all. When I got married, I was excited to have a house of my own. I loved my family, but I wanted my own space. My new husband was a barrister, which meant that he was often busy and away. He was a widower, so the house had many reminders of his first wife. She seemed to love to crochet and press flowers. Her things still sat on the side table as if waiting for her. Her eye for decoration tended to go towards the dark velvet drapes and thick rugs in muted colors. I longed for a bit of light. My husband came home one day excited. He announced that we were going to have a party. At first, I was excited too, until he told me that he hired a spiritualist to lead a seance. I never liked things like that. It seemed like a bad idea to open those types of doors. My husband was so excited, though, and I wanted to make him happy. His friends all came over the night of the seance. They were kind to me, but I felt out of place. The spiritualist came in under a dark veil, and with assistants dragging red drapery they put around the room. The group gathered around the round table set up for the occasion. My husband lowered the lamps while his friends lit numerous candles. I was supposed to be hosting the party, but I felt out of my element. Before I knew it, we were gathered at the table, holding hands as the spiritualist began. Right away, it felt like something was wrong. The room got very cold. Then came the sound of a woman crying. The sound moved around the room and then came to a stop right behind me. I admit I found the idea of a spiritualist suspicious. I didn't really believe, but I was scared. When I felt the cold breath of a woman's sobs on the back of my neck, I became so frightened it was like I lost consciousness. When I came back to myself, the party was over. Everyone was gone, and my husband was sitting beside a roaring fire, seemingly lost in thought. I made an excuse and went to bed. I couldn't sleep. I ended up making my way back down to the parlor in the middle of the night. I don't know what I was looking for, but when I came into the room, there was a woman standing in the corner. She had her back to me and was crying. I moved towards her, so scared but so curious. She spun around and grabbed my arms. "Don't drink the tea," she said in a harsh whisper. Then she disappeared. The next morning, my husband brought me a cup of tea before he left for the day. I didn't drink it. I followed him when he left the house, all the way to a beautiful garden where he met a pretty young woman who looked at him with stars in her eyes. I went home and waited. When he came back, I served him the reheated tea. He took one sip and his eyes flew to mine. Rage descended on his face and he moved towards me. Suddenly, the room got cold and I saw his eyes go wide. "No, please, no," he cried. A shadow passed through the room and he clutched his chest as he fell over. The doctor said it was a heart complaint. I have another seance scheduled. I said it was because I wanted to contact my husband. But really, I want to contact his first wife. I realized I recognized the crying woman from the oil painting in the parlor. I want to thank her for her help dealing with the problems of the house. When I was a child, I was sent to live with my grandmother. I lived in London with my parents in a relatively modern house that had gas lighting. I actually didn't like the gas lighting. It smelled bad and left dirty smudges on things, and the light made me feel kind of sick. Still, it was what I was used to. My parents wanted to travel, and having a 10-year-old girl along was apparently a hindrance on their boat journey. My grandmother lived in a country estate that was like being transported to the past. I was not prepared for how dark it would be at night With only the fireplaces and candles, it was spooky. My grandmother didn't even believe in oil lamps. I missed my parents and hated how cold and dark the home was, but there were perks. I was fascinated by the room my grandmother had on the second floor. Inside was a cabinet of curiosities. I was not allowed in the room, which made it all the more exciting. Every warning my grandmother gave me made me want that much more to see inside. One afternoon, she went out to visit a sick friend, and her housekeeper fell asleep. I stole the key and opened the room for the cabinet of curiosities. Inside was a jumble of the most amazing objects my young brain had ever seen. Mermaid creatures that shouldn't exist, odd skeletons, shining jewels locked away under glass, a puzzle box that beckoned. A stifling feeling overtook me. It was overly warm and damp, as if there were a large living thing breathing in the space. Fear stole through me, and when I went to leave, the door slammed shut, locking me in. From the corner of my eye, I saw a glowing box on one of the shelves. I moved closer, unable to stop myself. Inside was a simple metal ring. I barely realized I was reaching for it before my hand passed straight through the glass and touched the warm metal. In the distance, I could hear screaming. It sounded like my grandmother. By then, it didn't matter anymore. I had already put the ring on. Blinding light burned through me as a door materialized in what a second ago had been a plain wall. After that day, I wasn't scared of my grandmother's dark house because I could see in the dark. I wasn't afraid of long distances as I could run on all fours. It has taken me a few hundred years, but I am finally ready to open the door again. Not to go home. No, my plan is to bring my world to this one. I hope you're all ready for it.